Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is still coming under fire for her recent transgender policies. Most recently, an Alberta doctor says the policies contributed to his trans nephew's suicide. How did this happen? The nephew, in this case, was an adult in his late 30s. The Premier said that she will ban sex reassignment surgery as well as hormone therapy for most minors in the province. But she did promise to increase trans care for adults so they don't have to travel to Quebec. The doctor, in this case, has long been critical of the United Conservative Party government and is now requesting a meeting with the Premier. Maybe Danielle Smith and the Conservatives aren't the ones politicizing the trans issue after all. I'm Rachel Emmanuel, and this is the Alberta Roundup. Taking a look at our first story here. An Alberta doctor who has long been critical of the United Conservative Party government is requesting a meeting with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, saying that her recent transgender policies pushed his trans nephew over the edge. David Keegan's nephew was 37 years old when he committed suicide. Keegan is a family physician and a doctor of family medicine at the Cummings School of Medicine at the University of Calgary. Take a listen to what he had to say to City News following his nephew's suicide.
This shouldn't have happened. It was chosen. This is not the kind of way our province should be. I think people get really up in arms about compassion and stuff, but compassion's real. Every single person in Alberta deserves to live. Every single person in Alberta deserves to be here. Every single person deserves their medical conversations to be with their physicians and to be private and to be without the intrusion of politics.
While the Premier announced that sex reassignment surgeries would be banned for minors and that hormone therapy would be banned for those 15 and under, she actually announced that there would be more aftercare for trans adults, so they no longer have to travel out of province for care. The activist doctor has lamented the state of healthcare in the province for a few years now. In September 2022, Keegan filed a complaint with the Canadian Human Rights Commission over the federal government's decision to lift mask requirements on airplanes. The following June, he created a crowdfunding campaign to file a court injunction against Alberta Health Services' plan to lift its facility mask mandate. A few months later, in December, Keegan wrote a column for the Calgary Herald titled, "Why I Chose Alberta and What Went Wrong." At the time, he wrote, quote, "I've been here almost 16 years. Something has gone wrong with Alberta in this time. The wisdom that seemed to anchor Alberta's decision-making has been thrown out, replaced by refusals to address the opioid crisis, advance truth and reconciliation, and ensure we have strong health and education systems for all. And for what? To save a bit of money in the very short term and enable some companies to extract as much as they can while downloading costs to families in the future." A month later, a January article from the Red Deer Advocate covered how Keegan wears a ribbon he made from duct tape to, quote, "represent how Alberta's healthcare system is barely being held together." Smith didn't comment on whether she would meet with Keegan, but directed City News to the mental health helpline. We also found that a David Keegan of Calgary donated to the Alberta NDP in 2021, giving him $350. The activist doctor in question in this case did not respond to a request from True North confirming whether the donation was his. Moving into our next story here, following a measles outbreak across Canada, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is encouraging parents to get their child the MMR vaccine, which protects against measles, mumps, and rubella. The Premier said that uptake for the MMR vaccine has dropped by about 7 points to 72%, and she called that drop concerning. Take a listen.
And so we want to make sure that people understand that this is available and that we hope that they look at the risk, because the risk of consequences for measles can be very, very high. So I'm glad to see that the rates are still high and we haven't seen a problem, but it is an active discussion with our health minister about how we can make sure we get the word out so people know how to be able to get the vaccination for their kids.
Earlier this week, 17 cases of the measles were confirmed across Quebec, Ontario, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia. Moving into our controversy of the week, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said that recall legislation currently being used in an attempt to unseat Calgary Mayor Jyoti Gondek is a little unfair to voters because the bar is so high. Here's what else she had to say.
We have made the bar 40% of total population. So if you think about that, in a city like Calgary, that means that for a successful campaign to proceed, it would need 500,000 signatures. And I believe the mayor got 177,000 signatures in the general election.
The premier said it seems a little unfair that the recall legislation includes everyone, including those under the age of 18, as well as those who are not eligible to vote because they are not citizens. Smith said the legislation is currently under review, but that there won't be any changes while there is a live recall campaign ongoing. Petitioner Landon Johnston agrees the criterion is ridiculous. In an interview with me on this show a few weeks ago, you guys might have seen it, he said that it is statistically impossible to get enough signatures. Take a listen.
It's impossible. It's just statistically impossible. Even if you had unlimited resources, unlimited helpers, the pool of signatures is like 630,000 potential Calgarians that can sign this, but that doesn't take into account there's like 30, 40, 50,000 Calgarians who do not speak English. So like you have to find people that can communicate with those people.
Moving into what we're watching in the weeks to come. Last week, we discussed how Ottawa kiboshed the Alberta government's request to track safe supply drugs through chemical tracer. Alberta Mental Health and Addictions Minister had requested the federal government add a chemical tracer to safe supply drugs so that the government could see where they're ending up on the streets. Ottawa said that wouldn't be possible. This week, the RCMP revealed that thousands of opioid pills obtained by prescription through so-called safe supply harm reduction programs were seized by police in Prince George, BC, after they were found to have been diverted to organized crime groups reselling them across Canada. Corporal Jennifer Cooper of the RCMP's Prince George detachment said, quote, "Organized crime groups are actively involved in the redistribution of safe supply and prescription drugs. Many of the pills that were seized had been prescribed to specific individuals, but were found all collected together, no longer belonging to those individuals. It might mean how we regulate our safe supply might need a sober second glance." The corporal also said the issue has emerged in recent months, adding, quote, "What we have seen in Prince George is people taking prescribed medication, some of which is dedicated as safe supply prescription drugs, and selling them to organized crime groups in exchange for more potent illicit drugs. The organized crime groups are then taking the prescription drugs and selling them interprovincially across Canada." Alberta Premier Danielle Smith responded to the recent news on X, reminding the province that she had asked Ottawa to place those chemical tracers in the drugs so that so-called safe supply drugs could be more easily traced by the province. She added, quote, "We can't have high-potency opioids distributed as safe supply flooding over the border and into Alberta communities. This needs to stop now. No level of government should be helping criminals peddle deadly drugs on our streets." And moving into our weekly comment roundup and taking a look at some of the comments left under last week's Saturday's episode. Our first one is from user Napoleon Hoswag writing, quote, "Might be an unpopular opinion, but I love how much more cynical and condescending you have become, Rachel. Our government is full of people who don't compromise and believe they should control the fate of everyone. They refuse to find a middle ground, no matter how one may try. We saw this with Smith. Since the day she got in, she has been trying to work constructively with the feds and to no avail. The time for pleasantries has passed. Too many of our people's lives are on the line." I chuckled at this comment, and it's definitely very true. I remember when I graduated university and I was just starting out work in mainstream media. I wasn't nearly as conservative then as I am now. But I remember thinking that Justin Trudeau was sort of a misguided ideologue, and I've come a long way since then. I actually do believe he is trying to actively destroy our country with the policies that he's putting in place, whether it's because he wants a job for the UN afterwards, or maybe he wants to be Klaus Schwab's butler, or maybe he just thinks by destroying our country, he and the Liberals can stay in power longer. I'm not sure, but I certainly no longer believe that he is just misguided as I once did. Taking a look at the next comment here, Andrew Brown says, quote, "Canmore charges its homeless rent to sleep outside. I feel like you would fit right in. Alberta throws its homeless under the bus, and it's only gotten worse since UCP came in. It's very telling that my concern for the rising homelessness and addiction is being perceived by you as not supporting homelessness. I actually don't support homelessness because I believe we can offer these people a better life. They don't need to stay addicted to drugs. There are treatment options available. I believe we should continue to build on those treatment options and encourage these people to get into a treatment facility so that they can have a good life. Living on the streets is not a good life. These people are able to get treatment to hold down a job and to have their own apartment or their own house and to have a beautiful future where they have relationships with people. For some reason, you think the best we can offer these people is a nice cold spot on the ground, and I think that says more about you than it does about me. Okay, everyone, that's all I have time for today. As always, please like this video and subscribe to True North if you haven't already. You can also head over to donate.tnc.news if you want to support our work. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys on Wednesday. God bless.